Hey everyone, hope you're doing great. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we'll dive into what if Deku became the last hope of UA. Smash that subscribe button, and be sure to peek at the description below. Let's begin. The sky didn't turn blue that morning. It was a bruised, hematoma purple, choked by the smoke of 1,000 fires and the dust of a city that had simply ceased to exist. Izuku Midoriya hung suspended in the air, the wind screaming against his eardrums, but he couldn't hear it. He couldn't hear anything over the sound of his own heartbeat hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. The float quirk kept him aloft, but it felt less like flying and more like drowning in an ocean of open air. Below him, the floating tomb, the coffin in the sky designed to cage the monster, was tearing itself apart. Midoriya! Move! The voice was distorted, crackling through the calms in his ear, but the urgency was unmistakable. It was Best Jeanist. Or what was left of him. Izuku blinked, the world sharpening into a nightmare of high-definition horror. The plan had been perfect. The execution had been flawless. They had separated Tamura Shigaraki from the earth to nullify his decay. They had erased his quirks. They had thrown the combined might of Japan's greatest heroes at him. It hadn't been enough. A shockwave of pure, kinetic force erupted from the center of the floating platform. It wasn't a quirk. It was raw physical power, the kind that All Might used to command. Cables of carbon fiber, thicker than suspension bridges, snapped like dry spaghetti. The massive metal plates of the fortress groaned, twisted, and then exploded outward. Through the smoke, a figure emerged. He didn't look like a man anymore. His white hair danced in the updraft of the destruction he had caused. His skin was cracked, revealing pulsing red energy beneath, and his eyes were holes in reality. Shigaraki laughed. It wasn't a maniacal cackle. It was a low, resonant sound that vibrated in Izuku's marrow. Is that it? Shigaraki asked, his voice amplified by the sheer silence that followed the explosion. He raised a hand. Is this the pinnacle of your hero's society? A metal box and a few tired tricks? Don't listen to him. Endeavor roared. The number one hero launched himself from a piece of falling debris, a comet of hellfire. Prominence. Burn. The heat was instantaneous. It scorched the moisture from Izuku's eyes even from 50 meters away. The beam of concentrated plasma engulfed Shigaraki, turning the sky blindingly white. For a second, just a split second, hope flared in Izuku's chest. It has to work. It has to. But as the flames died down, a hand reached out from the inferno. Not burned. Not even singed. Shigaraki caught Endeavor by the face. Time seemed to dilate. Izuku saw the realization in Endeavor's eyes, not fear, but a sudden, crushing understanding of his own obsolescence. The all-for-one quirk didn't just steal power, it stole the future. Look at you, Shigaraki whispered, though the wind carried the words perfectly. Trying to be the symbol. You're just kindling. Black and red tendrils erupted from Shigaraki's fingers, spearing into the flame hero's shoulders and chest. Blood sprayed, misting instantly in the heat. Dad! The scream tore from Shoto's throat somewhere on the chaotic battlefield below, but Izuku was the only one close enough to act. Danger sense didn't just buzz, it stabbed Izuku in the brain. Move! Move! Move or die! Smoke screen! Black whip! Izuku released a deluge of purple smoke, obscuring the sky, and lashed out with tendrils of black energy. He wrapped them around Endeavor's waist, yanking the number one hero backward with enough force to dislocate a shoulder. He wasn't fast enough. Shigaraki didn't chase. He simply swiped his hand through the air. An air cannon blast, enhanced by radio waves and strength enhancers, tore through the smoke. It hit Izuku like a freight train. The world spun. Sky, ground, debris, sky again. Izuku slammed into one of the falling metal plates of the coffin, the impact shattering the ceramic armor on his left shin. He gasped, sucking in air that tasted of ozone and copper. He clutched Endeavor's unconscious body with his black whip, refusing to let go. Deku. The voice in his ear was weak. It was Eraserhead. Retreat. Izuku froze. Sensei? We can't, we have to. Look around you, problem child, Aizawa rasped. Look! Izuku looked. To the east, the containment team was gone. Ryukyu lay crushed under a slab of concrete. Gran Torino was nowhere to be seen. To the west, the aerial support was falling out of the sky, their engines clogged by Noma flesh. And directly below them, the massive form of Gigantomachia had broken through the ground defenses. The giant was tearing through the city, heading toward Shigaraki like a loyal dog responding to a whistle, leaving a canyon of ruin in his wake. The heroes weren't fighting anymore. They were dying. We lost, Aizawa said, the words heavy with a finality that broke something inside Izuku. The order has been given. Fall back to Yui initiate fortress mode. If you stay, one for all dies with you, and if one for all dies, the world ends. Izuku looked back at Shigaraki. The villain was floating amidst the falling debris, arms spread wide, basking in the destruction. He looked directly at Izuku. He smiled. Come back, the smile said. Let me take it. Izuku gritted his teeth so hard a molar cracked. Tears streamed horizontally across his face, whipped away by the wind. Every fiber of his being, every lesson All Might had taught him, screamed to go forward, to smash, to save. But the vestiges inside him, the second, the fourth, were pulling him back. Not today, they whispered. Today is for survival. I'm sorry, Izuku sobbed, the words lost to the wind. I'm so sorry. He turned away. Activating float and FA gene, he grabbed the limp body of Endeavor and rocketed toward the evacuation transports. He didn't look back. He couldn't. He knew that if he looked back, he would never leave. The flight back to Muzurifu was a blur of gray and red. Izuku sat in the cargo hold of a Neotech transport jet, his back pressed against the vibrating hull. The cabin was packed with the wounded. The smell was atrocious. Antiseptic, burned hair, and the metallic tang of fresh blood. Opposite him sat Katsuki Bakugo. Bakugo wasn't yelling. He wasn't raging. He was staring at his hands, his gauntlets cracked and empty. His face was streaked with soot, and his eyes were wide, fixated on nothing. He was toying with us, Bakugo said softly. Izuku didn't answer. He was busy watching a medic wrap bandages around what remained of Best Jeanist's torso. The fiber hero was alive, barely, his chest rising and falling in shallow, hitching gasps. Deku, Bakugo said, louder this time. He looked up, his eyes burning with a terrified fury. He didn't even use his full power. I could feel it. He was just testing his new body. If we couldn't stop him there, how the hell are we supposed to stop him at the school? We have the barrier, Izuku said. His voice sounded hollow, like it belonged to a stranger. The Yui barrier. It's designed to withstand anything. Anything? Bakugo scoffed, a wet, ugly sound. Did you see what he did to the crust of the earth? He decayed a city in seconds. A barrier is just a wall, and walls break. Izuku closed his eyes. He could still feel Shigaraki's presence, a phantom itch in the back of his skull. One for All was restless, the power boiling under his skin. It was angry. We don't have a choice, Kaken, Izuku whispered. There's nowhere else to go. The pilot's voice came over the intercom, trembling. Approaching Yui airspace. Fortress mode is active. Prepare for hard landing. The jet banked sharply. Izuku looked out the small porthole. Yui High School, the campus of his dreams, the place where he had eaten lunch with his friends and worried about math tests, was gone. In its place stood a fortress of dark metal. The massive blast doors had risen from the ground, encasing the main campus in a protective shell. The four towers of the H-shaped building were bristling with defensive cannons. The grounds, once green and welcoming, were now covered in refugee tents. Thousands of them. It looked like a castle under siege. It looked like a tomb. As the jet touched down on the reinforced airstrip, Izuku saw the students of Class 1A waiting on the tarmac. Uraraka, Ida, Tsuyu. They looked older. In the span of 12 hours, they had aged 10 years. The ramp lowered. The cool evening air rushed in, but it didn't bring relief. It brought the sound of crying. Thousands of civilians, huddled in the courtyard, wailing for lost homes and lost family members. Izuku stood up. His legs shook. He hoisted Endeavor's stretcher with the help of a medic. As he stepped off the plane, he met Uraraka's eyes. She ran to him, stopping just short of a hug when she saw the blood covering his costume. Her hands hovered, trembling. Deku-kun, she breathed. Is it true? The news, they said the heroes. It's true, Izuku said. He didn't sugarcoat it. He couldn't. Not anymore. We lost. They're coming. Day 3 of the siege. The waiting was worse than the fighting. The UA barrier system was a marvel of engineering. Developed by Principal Nizu and the top minds of the support course, including a frantic Mei Hatsum, it utilized independent energy grids and sectional gravity plates. Even if one section was decayed, it could be jettisoned and replaced instantly by underground reserves. It was, theoretically, impenetrable, but the atmosphere inside was poisonous. The school was overcrowded. Civilians were packed into the gymnasiums, the cafeterias, and the hallways. The air scrubbers were working overtime, but the air still felt recycled and stale. Food rationing had started on day 2. Izuku sat on the roof of the Alliance Heights dorms, staring at the horizon. He hadn't slept in 48 hours. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the wave of decay. He saw Aizawa cutting off his own leg to stop the spread. He had survived, but he was currently in a coma in Recovery Girl's overflowing infirmary. You should eat. Izuku didn't turn. He knew the footsteps. Shoto Todoroki sat down next to him, holding 2 nutrient jelly pouches. I'm not hungry, Izuku said. Eat, Shoto insisted, shoving the pouch into Izuku's hand. You're the engine. If the engine dies, the car stops. Izuku looked at Shoto. The dual-haired boy's face was unreadable, but the burn scar around his eye seemed more prominent in the twilight. Shoto had been handling the Dabi revelation with a terrifying calmness. He had buried his grief under layers of ice. Have you heard from the outside? Izuku asked, tearing open the pouch with his teeth. Nothing good, Shoto said, staring out at the barrier walls that blocked the view of the city. Most of the police force has surrendered. The villains are running the streets. They're calling it the liberation. Anyone who uses their quirk freely is celebrated. Anyone who resists is dealt with. And the other schools? Shiketsu fell yesterday, Shoto said flatly. They tried to hold out. Shigaraki sent Makia. Izuku gripped the pouch until it burst, gel oozing over his glove. We're the last ones. Yes. Why haven't they attacked yet? Izuku asked. They have the numbers. They have the power. Why wait? Psychological warfare, a squeaky voice said from behind them. Principal Nizu climbed out of the roof access hatch. The rodent-bear dog hybrid looked ragged. His fur was unkempt, and he walked with a slight limp, relying on a cane. He didn't look like the cheerful sadist of the exam arcs. He looked like a general losing a war. Principal Nizu, Izuku said, scrambling to stand up. Sit, Midoriya, Nizu waved a paw. Save your energy. Nizu walked to the edge of the roof, looking at the towering metal walls of his creation. All for one is many things, Nizu said, but he is not impatient. He knows that a fortress falls from the inside first. He is letting us stew in our own fear. He is letting the civilians turn against the heroes. He wants us to despair. It's working, Shoto muttered. The refugees in Gym Gamma tried to riot this morning. They wanted us to hand over Midoriya. Izuku flinched. What? They think you're the magnet, Shoto said, his voice cold. They think if we give Shigaraki what he wants, one for all, he'll leave the rest of them alone. They aren't wrong, Izuku whispered. They are entirely wrong. Nizu snapped, his tail lashing. Appeasement does not work with tyrants. If we hand you over, Shigaraki becomes invincible. He will not spare them. He will enslave them. You are not just a target, Midoriya. You are the deterrent. Nizu turned to face him, his black eyes fierce. But the barrier cannot hold forever. Our energy reserves are finite. And my intelligence suggests, he is here. As if on cue, the ground shook. It wasn't an earthquake. It was a rhythmic thumping. Tum. 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 Like the footsteps of a god. Sirens began to wail across the campus. The red alert lights bathed the dorms in the color of blood. Battle stations. Nizu barked into a communicator. Class 1A, Class 1B, to the North Gate. The pro-heroes are to form the second line. This is not a drill. Izuku didn't wait. He activated full cowling. Green lightning crackled around his body, illuminating the fear on Shoto's face. Let's go, Izuku said. The north gate was a scene out of the apocalypse. The students of UA stood atop the ramparts of the barrier wall. They were children dressed as soldiers. Momo Yaoyorozu was creating cannons and ammunition crates with frantic speed. Bakugo was pacing, explosions popping in his palms. Kirishima was hardened, his skin jagged and rough. But when Izuku landed on the wall, the silence that fell over them was absolute. They looked out into the darkness beyond the floodlights. At first, it looked like the ocean had risen to meet them. But it wasn't water. It was people, thousands upon thousands of villains. The Paranormal Liberation Front. Mutants, heteromorphs, quirk users of every shape and size. They stood shoulder to shoulder, a sea of hostility stretching as far as the eye could see. There were Hyenomos floating in the air, their exposed brains pulsating. And in the center of it all, standing on the back of Gigantomachia, was Tamura Shigaraki. He looked different than he had 3 days ago. The cracks in his skin had healed. He wore a suit, pristine black tailored. It was a mockery of the suit All For One used to wear. The cape on his shoulders fluttered in the night breeze. He raised a microphone to his lips. His voice boomed from massive speakers mounted on the villains' trucks. Citizens of the former Japan, Shigaraki began. His voice was smooth, charismatic, terrifying. Students of UA heroes. He paused, letting the word heroes hang in the air like an insult. You are huddled in a box, Shigaraki said. You are eating scraps. You are terrified. And for what? To protect a system that failed you? To protect a society that created me? The floodlights from UA trained on him, but he didn't blink. I am a merciful man, Shigaraki lied. I do not wish to slaughter you all. I only want one thing, he pointed. A single, pale finger extended toward the wall. Toward Izuku. Give me the boy, Shigaraki said. Give me one for all. And I will allow the rest of you to live. I will allow you to integrate into the new world order. Refuse. And I will turn this school into a grave. On the wall, the students tensed. Don't listen to him. Bakugo yelled, stepping up beside Izuku. He's full of crap. He's trying to divide us, Ida shouted, chopping his hand through the air, though his hand shook. Hold the line, Shigaraki sighed, a sound amplified to a deafening volume. Stubborn. Just like he was. He hopped down from Gigantomachia. He landed on the scorched earth with a soft thud. He began to walk toward the barrier. Midoriya, came a voice in Izuku's head. It was the first user. He is coming. Prepare yourself. Fire! Snipe commanded from a tower. Bullets, lasers, and fire rained down from the UA defenses. It was a barrage that could have leveled a mountain. Shigaraki didn't dodge. He simply raised his left hand. Reflect. A transparent wall of air appeared in front of him. The bullets ricocheted. The fire washed over it and dissipated. He kept walking. He reached the base of the massive steel wall. The UA barrier. The masterpiece of defense. It towered 50 meters above him, layers of reinforced titanium, energy shielding, and shock absorption gel. Shigaraki placed his bare hand against the metal. Let's see, he mused, how much hope you have left. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a sound. KRRZZT. It started as a groan, the sound of metal under extreme stress. Then it became a scream. The gray steel where Shigaraki touched turned instantly to dust. But it wasn't just the surface. The decay spread. It shot upward like veins of black lightning. Eject the plate. Nisa screamed over the comms. Section 4, eject. Eject. The wall tried to mechanically separate the infected section, explosive bolts firing to sever the connection. Too slow, Shigaraki whispered. He pushed harder. The decay jumped the gap. It infected the ejection mechanism. It ate through the gravity plates. The students on top of the wall screamed as the ground beneath them turned to ash. Uraraka! Izuku screamed. He activated Black Whip, firing dozens of tendrils to catch his classmates as the rampart disintegrated. He caught Uraraka, Kirishima, and Kaminari, pulling them back toward the main building. The massive wall, the fortress shield that was supposed to last forever, crumbled. A hole, 50 meters wide, opened up in the defenses. Through the cloud of dust, the villain army roared. It was a sound of bloodlust. Shigaraki stood amidst the falling dust, untouched. He looked up at Izuku, who was hovering in the air, holding his friends. "The sky is falling, Izuku Midoriya," Shigaraki said, his red eyes glowing in the dark. "And there is no one left to catch it." Shigaraki raised his hand toward the main campus building, where the civilians were hiding. "Charge," he whispered. The villain army surged forward. The Nomas shrieked and took flight. Izuku dropped his friends on the roof of the main building. He looked at Bakugo, who had landed beside him. He looked at Shoto, at Ida, at Momo. They were terrified. But they were standing. Izuku reached into his pocket and pulled out his mask. It was tattered, stained with blood and soot. He pulled it over his face. The green bunny ears were torn, one flopping sadly to the side. He didn't look like a symbol of peace. He looked like a demon. Green lightning exploded from his body, brighter than it had ever been. 45%. No. 60%. His bones creaked under the strain. "We are UA!" Izuku screamed, his voice breaking with the sheer weight of his desperation. "And we are still here!" He launched himself off the roof, diving straight into the breach, straight toward Shigaraki and the endless ocean of enemies. As he fell, he looked up one last time. The purple clouds parted for a brief second, revealing a single, cold star. And then, the clouds rushed back in, sealing the world in darkness. The siege of UA had begun. Day 7 of the siege. The taste of defeat was ash and stale recycled air. Izuku Midoriya sat on the cold linoleum of the corridor 3A hallway, his back pressed against a locker that bore the dent of someone's helmet. His chest heaved in a shallow, ragged rhythm. Beside him, Eijiro Kirishima was asleep sitting up, his hardening quirk flickering on and off in his exhaustion, his skin turning jagged and then smooth like a malfunctioning strobe light. 7 days. It had been 7 days since the sky cracked. 7 days since the UA barrier had been breached and then hastily patched with layers of Cementosa's concrete and Momo's creation steel. 7 days of living inside a pressure cooker. The school, once a bastion of light and learning, had transformed into a claustrophobic nightmare. The windows were boarded up or covered by heavy blast shutters. The emergency red lighting was the only illumination, bathing everything in the color of dried blood. "Midoriya." Izuku jerked his head up, his neck muscles screaming in protest. Tenya Ida stood over him. The class rep's armor was gone, stripped away for repairs that would never happen. He wore his gym uniform, torn at the knees and stained with grime. His glasses were cracked, held together by a strip of duct tape, Report Ida said. His voice was hoarse, stripped of its usual booming authority, replaced by the grim efficiency of a soldier. "Sector 4 is quiet," Izuku rasped. He stood up, his joints popping. "The villain stopped the bombardment an hour ago. It's weirdly silent." "They're regrouping," Ida said, adjusting his glasses. "Resource management says we're down to 15% on the main generator. The air scrubbers are failing in the gymnasium where the civilians are holding. Carbon dioxide levels are rising." Izuku looked down at his gloved hands. The fabric was worn thin. The scars underneath ached with the phantom pressure of one for all. "What about food?" Ida didn't answer immediately. He looked away, his jaw tightening. "Lunch rush collapsed an hour ago. Exhaustion. Sato and Rikido are trying to synthesize calorie bars from the chemistry lab supplies, but we have maybe 2 days left. If we ration strictly." 2 days. They had been fighting off waves of Nomu and Villain Alliance grunts for a week. Every time they pushed a wave back, another one crashed against the walls. The teachers were rotating on 2-hour sleep cycles. The students were barely sleeping at all. "We can't keep this up," Izuku whispered. It wasn't defeatism, it was math. "We have to," Ida said, though his eyes betrayed his own doubt. "We are the wall, Midoriya. If we break, everyone behind us dies." A tremor ran through the floorboards. Dust drifted down from the acoustic tiles of the ceiling. "Another mortar?" Kirishima mumbled, waking up with a start, his arms instantly hardening into jagged rock. "No," Izuku said, danger sense flaring like a migraine behind his eyes. It wasn't a projectile. It was something closer. Something underneath. That came from the basement. The power plant sub-level 4. May Hatsum looked like a coal miner. Her pink dreadlocks were black with grease, and her goggles were so smeared she had to constantly wipe them to see the holographic readouts. Come on, you beautiful baby, she muttered, wrenching a bolt on the main turbine casing. Don't you die on me. Not yet. The UA generator was a beast of a machine, designed to power a small city. But maintaining the fortress barrier, a hard light construct combined with gravity repulsion, consumed power like a black hole. Hatsum! Power loader shouted from the control console. Output is fluctuating. We're losing phase sync on the west wall. I know! May screamed back. The coolant lines are shot. I'm bypassing with liquid nitrogen, but the seals are melting. Suddenly, the heavy blast doors to the generator room didn't open, they melted. It wasn't heat. It was acid. Thick, viscous, purple acid that ate through 10 inches of reinforced steel in seconds. May froze. Power loader spun around in his mech suit. Standing in the dissolved doorway was not a villain army. It was a single man. He wore the standard UA custodial uniform, a mop bucket overturned next to him. His eyes were blank, glassy, and he was smiling a smile that was too wide for his face. The master sends his regards, the janitor said. Intruder! Power loader fired his capture claw. The janitor didn't dodge. His body simply swelled. His skin tore apart like wet paper, and from inside the human shell, a mass of gray flesh exploded outward. It wasn't just a quirk, it was a biological weapon, a Nomu. But not a mindless one. This was a sleeper agent, a body modified to hide a monster until the command phrase was spoken. The creature, a writhing mass of blades and acid ducts, shrieked. Hatsum, run! Power loader yelled, stepping between the girl and the monster. But the generator, go! Power loader engaged his excavating drills, charging the Nomu. The creature met him head-on. Acid sprayed. Metal screeched. May scrambled backward, clutching her wrench. She saw the Nomu's tail whip around Power Loader's mech, slicing through the hydraulic lines. Then, the tail struck the main turbine. The sound was deafening. The turbine shattered. The high-pitched whine of the generator dropped to a low, dying groan. The lights in the room died. Then, the lights in the hallway died. And above them, high above the school, the great golden dome of the barrier flickered, hummed, and vanished. The courtyard. The sudden silence of the barrier deactivating was louder than any explosion. One moment, there was the comforting hum of the shield. The next, there was only the wind. Izuku, standing on the balcony of the main building, looked up. The sky was naked. The protection was gone. Oh no, Uraraka breathed, standing beside him. From the darkness surrounding the school, a roar went up. It sounded like the earth itself was hungry. The villain army, which had been probing the defenses for a week, saw their opening. They're coming! President Mick's voice, amplified by his quirk, blasted across the campus, cracking with panic. All hands! Defensive line 0. This is it! It wasn't a wave this time. It was a tsunami. Floodlights from the villain's side snapped on, blinding the defenders. Thousands of quirks activated simultaneously. Fire, ice, lasers, sonic blasts. They poured over the outer walls of the UA, grounds like ants swarming a carcass. Class 1A! Bakugo roared, leaping from the balcony. Kill them all! Bakugo didn't wait for a strategy. He launched himself into the air, spinning like a howitzer shell. Howitzer impact. A massive explosion decimated the first line of villains breaching the south gate, but for every 10 he knocked down, 20 more climbed over their bodies. Izuku grabbed Uraraka's hand. We have to protect the entrance to the civilians. The gym, right. Uraraka's face was pale, but her eyes were hard. They dove into the fray. The battle was instant chaos. There were no formations, no tactics. It was a brawl. Izuku used Black Whip to snatch weapons out of hands, using FA-Gene to deliver bone-shattering kicks. He moved like a blur, a green lightning bolt in the dark. Smash! He drove a fist into the gut of a villain with reptile scales. Smash! He kicked a mutant with chainsaw arms into a wall. Detroit. Smash! The air pressure knocked back a dozen attackers, clearing a circle around him. But his arms were heavy. His lungs burned. He was fighting on fumes. To his left, Shoto Todoroki was creating a massive wall of ice, trying to plug the breach in the main gate. Dobby's blue flames washed over it, turning the ice to steam instantly. Still playing architect, little brother? Dobby's voice drifted through the steam. Focus on the objective. Shoto yelled to the others, ignoring the taunt. Don't let them inside. But they were already inside. A high-end Noma, the one with jet engines in its shoulders, crashed through the second-floor wall of the main building. It bypassed the students entirely. It was hunting. It's heading for the shelters. Momo screamed, creating a cannon she didn't have the lipids to fire. The faculty room. Eraserhead adjusted the bandages on his leg. He could barely stand. His prosthetic leg, a hasty replacement from the support lab, felt clumsy. But his eyes were clear. Midnight stood by the window, watching the horde overrun the courtyard. Her costume was torn, her dominance whip snapped in half. President Mike was slumped in a chair, bleeding from a head wound, clutching his throat. He had been screaming orders for 7 days straight. His voice was almost gone. The barrier is down, Aizawa said calmly. The generator is destroyed. We have lost containment. We can still fight, Midnight said, though her voice wavered. We can fight, Aizawa agreed. And we will die. And then the students will die. And then the civilians. He turned to look at his oldest friends. The 3 Dumbigos of UA. The ones who had started this journey together. We need to initiate the Tartarus Protocol, Aizawa said. Mike looked up, eyes wide. Shota, that seals the underground. If we do that, there's no coming back up. The air supply is limited. It's a tomb. It's a bunker, Aizawa corrected. It buys them time. Maybe a day. Maybe a week. Enough for a miracle. Or enough to survive until help comes from overseas. There is no help coming, Midnight whispered. Then we buy them life, Aizawa said. He pulled his yellow goggles over his eyes. We have to clear the path to the emergency elevators. We have to hold the line while they load the civilians. You mean we have to hold the line? Mike rasped, standing up and wiping the blood from his eyes. The students go down. Aizawa nodded. The students are the seeds. We are the soil. That has always been the job. Midnight ripped the sleeve off her costume and tied it around her forehead like a bandana. She smiled, a sad, beautiful thing. Well, if we're going to go out, let's make it a lesson they won't forget. The Great Hall. The retreat was a nightmare. Fall back. All Might's voice boomed over the remaining speakers. Retreat to the elevators. All students, prioritize civilian evacuation. Izuku heard the order, but obeying it felt like tearing his soul in half. He was currently holding up a collapsing ceiling beam with one hand while using Black Whip to pull a family of 4 out from under the rubble. The villains had breached the main hallway. The fight was now indoors. Deku! Move! Bakugo tackled him, blasting a villain who had been aiming a gun at Izuku's head. The ceiling beam crashed down, sealing off the west wing. We have to go! Bakugo yelled, grabbing Izuku's collar. Did you hear, All Might? We're leaving. We can't just leave the school. The school is dead, you nerd. The people are what matters. They ran. They ran through the corridors they used to walk to class. They ran past the shattered display cases of hero costumes. They ran past Class 1B, who were forming a phalanx to protect a group of crying first years. They reached the central hub. The massive blast doors to the underground emergency elevators were open. A river of civilians was flowing into them, but the villains were right behind them. A wave of twice clones poured over the balcony above, raining down onto the crowd. Panic erupted. Namuri! The scream came from President Mike. Izuku looked up. On the mezzanine level, Midnight was surrounded. She had ripped her costume open, exposing as much skin as possible. A massive cloud of pink somnambulist aroma exploded from her body. Go to sleep, you brats! She cried out. Dozens of villains dropped instantly, snoring. But a villain with a gas mask, a heteromorph with blades for hands, lunged through the mist. Midnight Sensei! Momo screamed, trying to run back. No! Midnight turned, smiling at her students. Run! Live! That is an order! The bladed villain struck. Midnight fell. Izuku felt the scream rip from his throat, but no sound came out. The horror was too absolute. Keep moving! Aizawa's voice cut through the grief like a whip. Eraserhead stood at the mouth of the elevator tunnel. He was using his capture scarf like a chaotic spiderweb, snagging villains out of the air and slamming them into the floor. Present Mike was beside him, unleashing a directional voice blast that shattered the bones of anyone who tried to approach the tunnel. Get in the elevators, Aizawa commanded, his hair floating, his red eyes darting frantically to erase the quirks of the heavy hitters. The students of Class 1A shoved the last of the civilians into the massive cargo lifts. Sensei, come on! Kirishima yelled, holding the elevator door open. There's room. Aizawa looked at his students. He looked at Izuku. He didn't move toward the elevator. He hit the button on the wall panel. Lock. Seal. The heavy blast doors began to slide shut. Sensei! Izuku lunged forward. Aizawa shot a capture tape, wrapping it around Izuku's waist and flinging him back into the elevator among his friends. You can't! Izuku scrambled up, grabbing the closing doors with his bare hands. Aizawa-sensei! Don't do this! Aizawa looked at him through the narrowing gap. Behind the teacher, the darkness of the hall was filling with glowing eyes. Shigaraki was there. He was walking through the front doors, decaying the floor as he stepped. Aizawa turned his back on the elevator. He faced the monster. Midoriya, Aizawa said, and for the first time in 3 years, his voice was gentle. You are the symbol now. Don't waste it. Aizawa! The doors slammed shut with a thunderous boom. The locks engaged. Izuku pounded on the metal. Open! Open! From the other side, a muffled sound. Present Mike screaming in rage. The sound of flesh hitting metal. Then silence. The elevator began to descend. The descent. The elevator car was huge, designed to carry heavy support gear, but it was packed with hundreds of sobbing people. The air was thick with fear. Izuku slid down the door, his forehead resting against the cold metal. He felt hollow. Midnight. Mike, Aizawa. Gone. Just like that. Pull yourself together, Bakugo growled, though he was shaking. He stood over Izuku. We have to get these people to the bunkers. Then we figure out a way out. There is no way out, Tokoyami muttered from the corner, clutching Dark Shadow, who was whimpering. We are trapped. The elevator descended for what felt like an eternity. Down into the bedrock beneath Muzurufu. Suddenly, the car lurched. Sparks showered from the ceiling panel. The emergency brake screeched, throwing everyone to the floor. What happened? Uraraka cried. They cut the cables, Ida said, looking at the panel. Or the shaft is collapsing. Above them, a terrible grinding noise echoed down the shaft. The ceiling of the elevator buckled inward. Debris! Izuku yelled. Danger sense! Everyone, to the walls. A massive chunk of concrete, likely from the school foundation above, smashed through the roof of the elevator. It bisected the car. The impact tore the floor apart. The elevator wasn't at the bottom yet. Izuku saw the floor drop out beneath a group of civilians. Without thinking, he activated Black Whip. Grabbed them. He caught 3 people. Shoji caught 2 more with his tentacles. Uraraka slapped zero gravity on falling debris to prevent it from crushing them. But the elevator was disintegrating. It was tilting precariously, hanging by a single guide rail. Deku! Bakugo reached out. Izuku was hanging off the edge of the shattered floor, holding a mother and child with his left hand, his right hand gripping a twisted girder. The girder groaned. Take them! Izuku swung his left arm, throwing the civilians upward. Bakugo caught them, pulling them to the safety of the stable side of the car. But the momentum swung Izuku outward. The girder snapped. DKU! Uraraka screamed. Izuku reached out. He saw Bakugo's hand, straining, fingers inches from his. He saw the desperation in his rival's crimson eyes. Explosion! Bakugo tried to propel himself forward to catch him, but a second piece of debris slammed into the car, knocking Bakugo back. Their fingers brushed. Just a touch, and then Izuku fell. He fell away from the light of the elevator. He fell into the abyss of the access shaft, down toward the old geothermal vents, and the discarded foundations of the original school. The darkness swallowed him whole. The Undercity. Pain. That was the first thing. A white-hot, blinding pain in his left leg. Izuku gasped, inhaling dust. He coughed, his body convulsing. Every inch of him felt like it had been put through a meat grinder. He opened his eyes. It was pitch black, one for all. 5%, he whispered. Green lightning flickered weakly around him, casting a dim, eerie glow. He was lying on a pile of rubble. Above him, he could see nothing but a vertical shaft disappearing into the dark. He had fallen. How far? 50 meters? 100? He tried to stand and collapsed with a cry. His left leg was broken. Badly. The bone was pressing against the skin. Kakin? He called out. Uraraka? His voice echoed, mocking him. No answer. He was alone. He looked around. He was in some kind of sub-basement. Old pipes, rusted and leaking steam, lined the walls. This was the old UA, the infrastructure that had been built over decades ago and forgotten. He was alive. But he was separated. Izuku dragged himself toward a wall, gritting his teeth against the agony in his leg. He leaned back, closing his eyes. He could feel them. The vestiges. He is alive, the first user whispered. But the school is fallen, the fourth said, a heavy sadness in his tone. Stand up, the second commanded. You are not dead yet. Izuku reached into his utility belt. His medical kit was crushed. He had one roll of tape and a small adrenaline injector. He looked at his leg. This is going to hurt, he set the bone. The scream he let out was animalistic, raw. He wrapped it tight with the tape, his vision blurring. He jammed the adrenaline into his thigh. The pain receded to a dull throb. He sat there in the dark, listening. Far above him, he could hear the faint, muffled sounds of explosions. The battle was over. The occupation had begun. The teachers were gone. The barrier was gone. His friends were trapped in a bunker, thinking he was dead. Izuku Midoriya looked at his hands. They were trembling. He clenched them into fists until the trembling stopped. I'm not done, he whispered to the darkness. I'm not done. He activated danger sense. It was buzzing all around him. The school was infested. I am the ghost, he muttered, repeating a line from an old comic book he and Bakugo used to read. I am the thing in the walls. He pulled his tattered hood up. The siege of the barrier was over. The siege of the shadows had just begun. Day 14 of the occupation. The air in Gymnasium Gamma didn't smell like sweat and rubber anymore. It smelled of unwashed bodies, fear, and the cloying, chemical scent of the quirk suppression collars. Ochako Uraraka sat with her knees pulled to her chest, staring at the scuffed floorboards. The collar around her neck was heavy, a thick band of black metal with a blinking red light that mocked her every heartbeat. It felt cold against her skin, a constant reminder that she was no longer Uravity. She was just Ochako. Number 442. Drink, a voice whispered beside her. She looked up. Tsuyu Ajiri offered her a plastic cap filled with lukewarm water. Tsuyu looked terrible. Her skin was dry and gray, lacking the moisture she needed to stay healthy. One of her eyes was swollen shut from when a guard, a mutant with rock skin, had backhanded her for moving too slowly during the morning count. You need it more than me, Tsu, Ochako whispered, her voice cracking. I had some, Tsuyu lied. She was a terrible liar. Drink, Karo. Ochako took the cap. Her hands trembled. She sipped the water, letting it wet her parched throat. Around them, the remnants of the hero corps sat in clusters of misery. They were separated by class, but the barriers were fluid in the prison camp. Class 1B was huddled near the bleachers. Monoma was silent, staring at the wall, his usual bravado utterly extinguished. Kendo was trying to bandage a cut on Tetsu's arm with a strip of torn shirt. But the silence was the worst part. Bakugo sat near the blocked double doors. He hadn't spoken in 3 days. He just stared at the doors. His eyes were bloodshot, rimmed with dark circles. He looked like a feral animal that had been chained up too long. The rage was still there, but it was burying itself deep, turning into something poisonous. He was waiting. They were all waiting, waiting for an execution. Waiting for Shigaraki to decide he was bored. Or waiting for the miracle that they all knew, deep down, wasn't coming. The heavy doors groaned open. The room flinched. 300 heads snapped up. A squad of villains walked in. They weren't the disorganized thugs of the early days. These were Paranormal Liberation Front soldiers, wearing tactical gear. Leading them was Spinner. The lizard villain looked tired. He held a clipboard. Roll call, Spinner barked. If I call your number, you stand up. If you don't stand up, you don't eat. If you try anything. He tapped the remote detonator on his belt. The collars on everyone's necks hummed ominously. You get the shock. And if you keep trying, the collar blows. Do we understand? Yes, the students murmured, a chorus of defeat. Louder! Yes, Spinner sneered, though there was no joy in it. He started reading numbers. Ochako tuned him out. She looked at the high windows of the gym. They were painted over with black paint, but a single scratch in the coating let in a tiny, blinding beam of sunlight. Dust motes danced in it. Deku-kun, she thought, the grief hitting her like a fresh physical blow. She replayed the fall in her mind every night. The elevator shaft. The debris. Bakugo's outstretched hand grasping nothing but air. The silence that followed. The villains had told them, gleefully, that no body was found. Just paste, one had laughed. Squashed like a bug, but they hadn't found a body. Number 17. Spinner barked. Bakugo didn't move. Number 17. Bakugo Katsuki. Bakugo slowly lifted his head. He looked at Spinner with eyes that burned with a low, cold hate. Stand up, Spinner commanded, his hand hovering over the remote. Bakugo stood. He didn't slouch. Even in prison rags, he stood like he owned the room. Food distribution is at the south entrance, Spinner muttered, marking the clipboard. Move. As the line of students began to shuffle forward, a sudden commotion erupted from the hallway outside. Get off me! A villain was screaming. Not in anger, in terror. The door burst open again. A PLF guard stumbled into the gym, clutching his arm. Or rather, where his arm used to be. It was twisted backward, the bone snapped clean, hanging limp at his side. He's in the vents! The guard shrieked, his eyes wide and white. I saw him! I saw the green eyes! Spinner stiffened. He grabbed the guard by the collar. Who? Who did you see? The ghost. The guard sobbed. The ghost of Ue. He took the batteries. He took them and he broke my arm. A ripple of electricity went through the room. The students exchanged glances. Ghost? Shut up! Spinner roared, shoving the man away. There are no ghosts. It's just a rat in the walls. Get a squad to Sector 4. Flush the vents with gas. The villain scrambled. Spinner looked back at the students, his expression shifting from command to unease. Move! He yelled. Anyone who talks about this loses rations for a week. Ochako walked past Bakugo. For the first time in days, Bakugo wasn't looking at the floor. He was looking at the ceiling vents, and on his face, for just a fraction of a second, Ochako saw it. Hope. The walls have eyes. The ventilation shafts of UA High were designed to circulate air for thousands of students. They were massive, labyrinthine tunnels of galvanized steel. Now, they were the veins of a dying organism. Izuku Midoriya crawled through the darkness. He moved on 3 limbs. His left leg was dragging behind him, splinted with 2 metal rulers and wrapped in duct tape. It hadn't healed right. The bone knitted crookedly in the absence of recovery girl or a hospital. Every movement sent a spike of white-hot agony up his hip, but he welcomed the pain. Pain meant he was alive. Quiet, the 4th user's voice echoed in his skull. Danger ahead. 2 targets. 10 meters. Izuku stopped. He controlled his breathing, slowing his heart rate until he was practically a statue. He was covered in soot and grease. His costume was a ruin, the green fabric torn away to reveal scarred skin, the iron soles of his boots worn down to the metal. He wore his hood up, the tattered ears drooping, casting a shadow over his face. Below him, through the grate of the vent, he saw them. 2 villains patrolling the 3rd-floor corridor. They were carrying flashlights, their beams cutting through the gloom. I hate this shift, one muttered. He had a quirk that made his skin slimy, like an eel. Why do we have to patrol the science wing? It's empty. Because the boss says supplies are going missing, the other replied. He was big, holding a heavy machine gun. Batteries. Chemicals. Food. It's probably rats, Yeoman said, shivering. Or some of the students got loose. None of the students got loose, the gunner said. The collars work. Besides, if it was a student, they'd try to run for the exit. Whoever this is, they're staying inside. Izuku watched them. His stomach growled, a hollow, cramping sensation. He hadn't eaten in 2 days. The last thing he'd consumed was a packet of dried crackers he'd stolen from the teacher's lounge. They have ration bars, the second user noted. On their belts. We need them, the third agreed. Take them out. Non-lethal, Izuku thought back, a habitual reflex. They are occupiers, the second growled. They are jailers. Do what is necessary. Izuku didn't argue. He didn't have the energy to argue with the ghosts in his head. He just shifted his weight. He reached into his utility belt, now restocked with scavenged items, and pulled out a small glass vial. He had made it in the chemistry lab 3 nights ago. Smoke pellets. He dropped the pellet through the grate. Tink. It hit the floor behind the villains. What was that? The gunner spun around, raising his weapon. Hiss. A cloud of thick purple smoke exploded, filling the corridor instantly. It was smokescreen, but amplified by the chemical reaction. Gas. The gunner fired blindly into the smoke. Bullets sparked against the lockers. Izuku kicked the grate out. It fell with a clang. He dropped. He didn't use float. He used gravity. He landed silently behind the Eelman. Black whip. 4 tendrils shot out from his back, black energy crackling with green sparks. They wrapped around the Eelman's mouth and waist. Izuku yanked him upward, slamming him into the ceiling tiles with a sickening crunch. The villain went limp before he could scream. The gunner heard the impact. He spun around, eyes wild. Who's there? Show yourself. Izuku stood in the smoke. The only things visible were the glowing green irises of his eyes and the green lightning arcing across his body. Monster. The gunner whispered, backing away. Izuku moved. 1 for all, 15%. He closed the distance in a blur. He didn't punch. He swept the gunner's legs, shattering the man's knee. As the villain fell, screaming, Izuku chopped the vagus nerve in his neck. The scream cut off. The villain collapsed. Silence returned to the corridor. Izuku stood over them, breathing heavily. His leg throbbed. He looked down at the unconscious men. Search them, the fourth urged. Izuku knelt. His hands were efficient, practiced. He stripped the ration bars from their belts. He took a water flask. He took a spare magazine of ammunition, not for a gun, but for the gunpowder. He took a radio. He looked at the gunner's face. The man looked young, maybe 20. Just a grunt. Kill him, the second whispered. If he wakes up, he reports your location. No, Izuku rasped. His voice was like grinding stones. He hadn't spoken aloud in days. He used black whip to tie them together, suspending them from the ceiling pipes like caught flies. He ripped a piece of fabric from the gunner's shirt. He dipped his finger in the Eelman's slime. It was black and ink-like, and wrote on the wall, I am still here. He looked at the message. It wasn't a threat. It was a promise. He grabbed the grate, jumped back into the vent, and pulled the cover shut. By the time the backup squad arrived, there was nothing left but smoke and 2 terrified villains hanging in the dark. The nest. Izuku's base was located in sub-level 6. It was an area that didn't appear on the official blueprints. It was the drainage runoff for the old boiler systems, a cavernous concrete room filled with pipes and dripping water. It was damp, cold, and infested with actual rats. It was perfect. Danger sense couldn't penetrate deep earth easily, but neither could the villain's search quirks. Izuku dropped from a rusted pipe onto his mattress, a pile of gym mats he had stolen one by one. He sat down and tore open a ration bar. It tasted like cardboard and sawdust. He ate it in 3 bites. Report, he muttered to himself. He turned on the stolen radio. Static hissed. Then a voice. Sector 3 is clear. Nothing found. Sector 4 is secure. But I swear I heard something in the walls. Command says Dobby is coming down to inspect the perimeter. Look sharp. Izuku stiffened. Dobby, the man who had burned his father's agency. The man who was currently holding the upper floors. He's getting impatient, the first said. Shigaraki is recovering in the master suite. Dobby is running the security. Izuku looked at the wall of his nest. It was covered in papers. Maps of the school. Patrol schedules he had memorized. And in the center, a list of names: Class 1A, Class 1B, teachers. He had crossed out Midnight. He had crossed out President Mike. He had put a question mark next to Aizawa. He looked at the name Bakugo. I need to know they're okay, Izuku whispered. I need to see them. Risky, the sixth user, N warned. The gym is the most heavily guarded sector. Sensors. Cameras. Guards. I know, Izuku said. He pulled his mask off. His face was gaunt, his cheekbones sharp enough to cut glass. He had a beard starting to grow, patchy and unkempt. A scar ran from his hairline to his jaw, a souvenir from a near high-end Noma he'd fought on day 3. But if I don't see them, I'm going to lose my mind. He looked at the pile of junk he had scavenged. Wires, batteries, a broken support item gauntlet. May, he thought. I need May. If he could get to the development studio, he could fix his comms. If he fixed his comms, he could tap into the school's PA system. But the development studio was now a forced labor factory. The villains were making the support course students repair their weapons. 2 birds, Izuku muttered. Get gear. Check on the students. He stood up. His leg screamed, but he ignored it. He pulled the mask back on. Let's go to work. The workshop of horrors. The development studio looked like a sweatshop. The beautiful, chaotic mess of May Hatsum's lab was gone. In its place were rows of workbenches where students sat hunchbacked, welding armor plates and fixing quirk enhancement drugs. May Hatsum was working on a detonator. Her goggles were around her neck. Her eyes, usually zoomed in and frantic with invention, were dull. A villain with a shock prod paced behind her. Faster, girl, the villain grunted. The boss wants 50 of these by morning. I can't work faster if the soldering iron is cold, May snapped, though her voice lacked its usual manic energy. Physics is physics, you Neanderthal. Zap. The villain jammed the prod into her shoulder. May cried out, dropping the tool. She curled in on herself, shaking. Watch your mouth, the villain spat. Or maybe I'll have you test the next bomb. May gritted her teeth, tears pricking her eyes. She reached for the soldering iron again. Suddenly, the lights flickered. Not just a flicker. A strobe effect. On. Off. On. Off. What now? The villain growled, tapping his headset. Maintenance. We have power fluctuation in the lab. No answer. Maintenance? The lights went out completely. Stay in your seats. The villain shouted, his prod crackling in the dark, casting long, dancing shadows. Anyone moves, I fry them. From the darkness of the ceiling, a sound. Click. Whir. Snap. It sounded like a machine. Or a predator. Who's there? The villain yelled, swinging his prod. 2 green eyes opened in the rafters. Target acquired, a distorted voice whispered. The villain looked up. Izuku dropped. He didn't touch the ground. He caught himself on a hanging light fixture, swung, and kicked the villain in the chest with both feet. The impact threw the man across the room, smashing him into a rack of metal sheets. Chaos erupted. The other 3 guards in the room activated their quirks. One fired spikes, another turned into a werewolf-like beast. Power loader! Get the students down! Izuku shouted. He wasn't whispering now. He was barking orders. He landed in a crouch. Black Whip erupted, grabbing the spike villain's projectiles out of the air and flinging them back. The villain yelped as his own spikes pinned him to the wall by his clothes. The werewolf charged. Izuku didn't retreat. He stepped into the guard, dodging a claw swipe by a millimeter. F.A. Gene. 30%. He punched the werewolf in the solar plexus. The shockwave blew the windows of the lab outwards. The beast folded, vomiting bile, and collapsed. Izuku turned to the last guard. The man dropped his weapon and ran for the door. Lock it! Izuku commanded. May Hatsum, realizing who it was, lunged for the emergency override panel. She slammed the button. The blast doors slammed shut, trapping the fleeing guard. Izuku webbed him to the door before he could scream. Silence returned to the lab. The support students slowly stood up. They looked at the figure in the center of the room. He looked terrifying, a silhouette of ragged cloth and green lightning. Midoriya? Mei whispered. Izuku turned. He lowered his hood. Mei gasped. He looked 40 years old. His eyes were sunken, his skin pale. Handsome, Izuku said, limping toward her. I need a favor. Mei looked at him, then at the unconscious villains, then back at him. A spark ignited in her crosshair eyes. The old Mei. You look like scrap metal, muscles, she said, a trembling smile appearing. Totally inefficient. Can you fix it? Izuku gestured to his gauntlets, which were sparking. Baby, Mei said, grabbing her wrench. I can fix anything. She turned to the other students. You heard him. Barricade the doors. We have 5 minutes before they burn through. Power loader, get the welding torch. We're doing a hot swap on the Midoriya Mk7. For the next 4 minutes, the lab was a blur of activity. It wasn't forced labor anymore. It was rebellion. Mei worked with feverish speed, stripping the damaged plating from Izuku's suit. She reinforced his leg brace with hydraulic pistons scavenged from a villain's mech suit. She recalibrated his Air Force gauntlets. I don't have the materials for full armor, Mei said, tightening a bolt on his knee. But this brace will absorb 60% of the recoil. You can kick again without your leg falling off. Thanks. Izuku winced as she cauterized a loose wire near his skin. Also, Mei handed him a small, black earbud. I patched into their frequency. It's encrypted, but I built a backdoor. You can hear them. And she handed him a small drive. This has the layout of the patrol routes. They change them every 12 hours. You're a genius, Izuku said. I know. She looked at him, her hands covered in grease and his blood. Midoriya, are you going to win? Izuku looked at his new gauntlets. They were mismatched, ugly, bolted together with hate and hope. I'm going to make them regret coming here, he said. Bang! Bang! Sparks flew from the blast door. A blue flame cut through the metal. Dabi, Izuku said. Danger sense flared. Go! Mei pointed to the ventilation hatch. We'll cover you. We'll tell them you overpowered us. Izuku hesitated. They'll hurt you. They need us, Mei said firmly. They don't need you. Go! Izuku nodded. He grabbed a bag of supplies Mei had packed. Batteries, food, a first aid kit. He jumped into the vent just as the blast door melted into slag. As he crawled away, he heard Dabi's voice. Where is he? Where is the little mouse? He went that way. Mei lied loudly. He went to the roof. Izuku gritted his teeth and crawled deeper into the dark. The ghost's message. He couldn't go to the roof. He had one more stop. The gymnasium gamma ventilation system was heavily guarded, but Mei's map showed a blind spot. An old maintenance hatch behind the scoreboard. Izuku navigated the shafts. His new leg brace whirred softly, taking the weight off his fracture. He felt faster. Stronger. He reached the grate overlooking the gym. He looked down. Thousands of students sleeping on mats. The smell of misery was overwhelming. He activated his quirk, zooming his vision. He found them. Class 1A. Uraraka was asleep, curled in a ball. Ida was sitting up, keeping watch, though his eyes were closed. And Bakugo. Bakugo wasn't sleeping. He was lying on his back, staring directly at the scoreboard. Staring directly at the grate where Izuku was hiding. It was impossible. He couldn't see Izuku in the dark. But Bakugo had always had sharp instincts. Izuku felt a lump in his throat. I'm here, Kaken, he thought. I didn't leave you. He couldn't speak. He couldn't drop down. The room was lined with motion sensors, but he had to let them know. He reached into his pocket. He pulled out a small object he had taken from the development lab. It wasn't a weapon. It was a piece of fabric. A strip of the yellow cape that Gran Torino wore. He had found it in the ruins of the battlefield days ago and kept it. He tied it around a heavy bolt. He waited for the rotation of the security camera to sweep past. Now, he dropped the bolt through the grate. It fell silently, landing on the mattress next to Bakugo's head with a soft thud. Bakugo didn't flinch. He waited a second. Then, slowly, casually, he rolled over. His hand covered the bolt. He pulled it under his blanket. Izuku watched, holding his breath. Under the blanket, Bakugo unwrapped the fabric. Even from this distance, Izuku saw Bakugo's shoulders stiffen. He recognized it. Bakugo sat up slowly. He stretched, feigning a yawn. But he looked up at the scoreboard. He didn't smile. He didn't wave. He raised his hand and made a fist. A tight, trembling fist. And then he tapped his chest, right over his heart twice. I hear you. We are ready. Izuku let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. Tears stung his eyes, but he wiped them away instantly. Danger sense. Something was coming up the vent behind him. Fast. Found you, a voice hissed. Izuku spun around in the cramped space. A villain with a snake-like body was slithering toward him, fangs dripping venom. You're the rat causing all the trouble, the snake villain hissed. Izuku didn't panic. He didn't even blink. No, Izuku whispered, the green lightning illuminating the terrifying skull-like visage of his mask. I'm the exterminator, Black Whip. He grabbed the villain, slammed him into the metal wall of the vent, and knocked him unconscious before the sound could echo. He looked back down at the gym one last time. Wait for the signal, Izuku whispered. He turned and vanished into the labyrinth. The war room. In the principal's office, Tamura Shigaraki sat in Nisa's chair. His feet were propped up on the desk. Another patrol lost in Sector 4, Dabi said, leaning against the wall. He looked bored, but his eyes were sharp. And the support lab was raided. The kids say he was a monster. Glowing eyes. Metal limbs. Shigaraki chuckled. He picked up a chess piece from Nisa's unfinished game, a white king. He's adapting, Shigaraki said. He's becoming a symbol. A ghost story? It's bad for morale, Dabi said. The grunts are scared of the dark. They think he's All Might's vengeful spirit, or some crap. Let them be scared, Shigaraki said. He crushed the white king in his hand, turning it to dust. Fear makes them alert. But we can't let him run free forever. He looked out the window, at the dark campus below. He wants to save them, Shigaraki mused. That's his weakness. He's starving, he's broken, but he's still playing hero. So, Shigaraki smiled, a horrific expression that stretched his scars. We stopped chasing the mouse. We put out the cheese. The cheese? Tomorrow, Shigaraki said. Bring out one of the students. Anyone. Make it public. Announce an execution. Dabi grinned. Blue flames licked his staples. Who? Does it matter? Shigaraki shrugged. Pick the loudest one. Or the one closest to him. Draw him out into the light. And when he comes, Shigaraki stood up. The air in the room grew heavy, suffocating. We will break him in front of the whole world. Deep below, in the sub-basement, Izuku sneezed. Someone is talking about you, the fifth user, Daigoro said. Let them talk, Izuku muttered, adjusting his new leg brace. He bit into a fresh apple he had stolen from the villain's pantry. It was the sweetest thing he had ever tasted. He looked at his map. He drew a line from the sub-basement to the central tower. They're going to try to lure me out, Izuku said to the empty room. They know I'm here now. Then we must be ready, the first said. The time for hiding is ending. The time for war is coming. Izuku lay back on his mat. He closed his eyes. He didn't see nightmares this time. He saw Bakugo's fist. He saw Mei's smile. I'm not alone, he whispered, and for the first time in 2 weeks, the ghost of Yue slept without fear. Day 18 of the occupation. Silence was a lie. Izuku Midoriya knew this now. There was no such thing as true silence. Even here, 300 feet beneath the surface of the earth, in the damp, dripping dark of the sub-basement drainage tunnels, the world was deafening. If the rats weren't scratching at the concrete, the pipes were groaning. If the pipes were silent, his own heart hammered against his ribs like a trapped bird. And if his heart slowed, they started talking. To your left. 3 degrees. Heat signature, the third user whispered. Patrol pattern Delta. They are getting sloppy, the second user growled. Punish them. Rest, ninth. You need to rest, the fourth user urged, his voice heavy with the lethargy of a man who died of old age at 40. He can't rest. Look at the perimeter. The fifth shouted. Izuku squeezed his eyes shut, pressing the heels of his hands into his temples. He was curled into a ball on his mattress of stolen gym mats. The air was cold, but he was sweating. Quiet, Izuku rasped. His voice was a wreck, a jagged thing of unused vocal cords and dehydration. Please. Just quiet. But they didn't stop. They never stopped. Since the barrier fell, since the isolation began, the vestiges of One for All had become less like spiritual guides and more like a crowded room of generals shouting over a map table. The line between his thoughts and their voices had eroded. A shimmering figure materialized in the gloom. It was Yagi Tashinori, All Might. But not the Titan of the Golden Age. It was the skeletal, deflated form. And he looked transparent. Fading. Midoriya, my boy, the vestige of All Might said softly. You are burning the candle at both ends. Your body is holding, but your mind. I'm fine, Izuku lied to the ghost. You are starving, the second user, Kudo, cut in. He appeared next to All Might, arms crossed, his face scarred and hard. And you are weak. You let that patrol go yesterday. You dislocated a shoulder when you should have severed the spinal cord. I don't kill, Izuku muttered. This is war. Ninth, Kudo stepped closer, his presence feeling like a physical weight on Izuku's chest. Look around you. This isn't a classroom. It's a slaughterhouse waiting to happen. If you don't put them down permanently, they wake up. They heal. They hurt your friends. Is your morality worth Bakugo's life? Is it worth Uraraka's? Izuku flinched. The image of Uraraka, collared and chained, flashed through his mind. Stop it, Izuku whispered. The boy has a point, Kudo, the first user, Yoichi, interjected gently. We cannot become monsters to defeat monsters. We are already monsters. Kudo roared, his voice echoing in the physical tunnel, not just the mindscape. We are ghosts haunting a graveyard. If he doesn't strike fear into them, true, primal fear, they will never stop. Izuku sat up, gasping. The vestiges flickered and vanished, retreating back into the buzz of his subconscious. He was alone again. Just a boy in a dark hole, smelling of sewage and dried blood. He looked at his hands. They were trembling. The gauntlets Mei had jury-rigged were scarred and dented. His costume was a patchwork of rags. I need to move, he told himself. If he stayed still, the voices got louder. He stood up. The hydraulic brace on his left leg whirred, compensating for the fracture that still throbbed with a dull, sickening ache. He pulled his hood up. Danger sense, he commanded. The quirk flared, a spider web of stinging sensation extending outward. Above him. To the east. The cafeteria kitchens. Supplies, Izuku whispered. He vanished into the shadows. The hunt. The cafeteria kitchen was one of the few places in UA that still had power. The villains needed to eat, and they needed to feed the prisoners enough to keep them alive as bargaining chips. It was 0300 hours. The graveyard shift. Izuku moved through the ceiling crawlspace. He was silent, utilizing float to hover inches above the metal panels so his weight made no sound. Through a vent he looked down. 3 villains. One was a large heteromorph with the head of a bull. The other 2 were smaller, carrying shock rifles. They were raiding the pantry, stuffing high-grade protein bars into their pockets while laughing. Did you see the crying one in Block B? The bull laughed, tearing open a bag of rice and spilling half of it on the floor. The little girl with the ponytail? She begged me for an extra blanket. What did you do? One of the riflemen asked. I burned it in front of her, the bull snorted. Told her heroes don't get cold. They laughed. A cruel, wet sound. Inside the vent, Izuku's vision went red. Kill him, the second user hissed. Snap his neck? He is tormenting children. He deserves no mercy. Break his legs, the third suggested. Disable the threat. Save the food, the fourth reminded. Izuku felt the anger boiling in his gut. It wasn't the righteous fury of a hero anymore. It was something darker. Cold. Predatory. He kicked the vent cover. It crashed onto the stainless steel prep table. The villain spun around. Who's there? The bull bellowed, activating his quirk. His muscles swelled, ripping his shirt. Izuku dropped. He landed in a crouch on the prep table. The kitchen lights flickered. Green lightning arced from his body, casting long, dancing shadows that looked like claws. The ghost. The riflemen screamed. Shoot him, they fired. Electricity crackled through the air. Izuku didn't dodge. He moved through the attack. F.A. Gene, 40%. He appeared in front of the first rifleman. He didn't punch. He grabbed the barrel of the rifle and crushed it with his bare hand. As the villain stared in shock, Izuku headbutted him. The impact cracked the villain's mask and sent him flying into the industrial oven. The second rifleman tried to run. Black whip, tendrils shot out, snagging the villain's ankle. Izuku yanked. The man hit the floor face first. Stay down, Izuku growled. His voice sounded distorted, layered with the echoes of the vestiges. You little rat! The bull charged. He was massive, a juggernaut of muscle. He swung a fist the size of a microwave. Izuku ducked. The wind of the punch ruffled his hair. He's open, the third whispered. Kidneys, throat, the second corrected. Crush the windpipe. Izuku hesitated. The lethal strike was there. Easy. Efficient. Final. In that split second of hesitation, the bull backhanded him. Izuku went flying. He smashed through a shelving unit, pots and pans raining down on him with a cacophony that would surely alert the guards. He hit the wall and slid down, gasping. His ribs groaned. You hesitated, Kudo spat in his mind. You are weak. The bull picked up a heavy meat cleaver from the counter. I'm going to mount your head on the wall, little hero. Izuku looked up. The bull was grinning. Something inside Izuku snapped. Not a bone. Something else. He stood up. The green lightning turned a darker shade, almost teal. You burned her blanket, Izuku whispered. The bull paused. What? Yayorozu, Izuku said. She gets cold easily. Her quirk burns lipids. She needs warmth. Izuku took a step forward. The floor tiles cracked under his boot, and you burned it. He vanished. Smash. It wasn't a clean technique. It was a brawl. Izuku appeared in the air above the bull. He brought his heel down. Manchester smash. He hit the bull's shoulder. The sound of the collarbone shattering was sickeningly loud. The bull screamed and dropped the cleaver. Izuku didn't stop. He landed, grabbed the bull's horns, and kneed him in the face. Once. Twice. 3 times. Blood sprayed across Izuku's mask. The bull collapsed, unconscious, his face a ruin. Izuku stood over him, chest heaving. His fist was raised for another strike. Finish it, the voice said. Izuku stared at the unconscious villain. The man was helpless. Broken. No, Izuku whispered. He lowered his hand. He quickly grabbed a sack, filling it with the protein bars and water bottles the villains had been stealing. He tied it to his belt. The door to the hallway burst open. In here. I heard fighting. Izuku shot a black whip to the ceiling vent. He pulled himself up just as a squad of PLF soldiers rushed in. He watched from the darkness as they found the broken bodies of their comrades. It's him, one whispered. He's getting more violent. Izuku turned and crawled away. He touched his mask. It was wet with blood. You let him live, the second user said, sounding disappointed. I let him live, Izuku thought back, his mind numb. But he won't be burning blankets anymore. The static line. Izuku returned to the nest an hour later. He ate 2 protein bars in silence, the taste of chocolate and whey doing little to settle his stomach. He felt like he was losing his mind. The voices were constant now. Arguing about tactics, critiquing his movements, debating philosophy while he tried to survive in a sewer. I need something real, he whispered. He crawled over to the corner where he kept his tech. The comms unit May had fixed. He put the earpiece in. He adjusted the frequency dial with trembling fingers. Static. Come on, May, he pleaded. Be there. He tapped the Morse code sequence on the mic. 3 taps. Pause. 3 taps. Silence. Then a click. Midoriya? The voice was tiny, tinny, and the most beautiful thing he had ever heard. May, Izuku breathed. He leaned his head against the cold concrete wall. I'm here. You're late, May Hatsum whispered. I was about to dismantle the receiver. The guards are doing a sweep of the spectrum. I got held up, Izuku said. Are you okay? I'm working, May said, her voice tight. They have us building drones. Hunter-killers. Designed to track heat signatures in the tunnels. They're looking for you, Muscles. Let them look, Izuku said. May. I'm losing it down here. The vestiges. They won't shut up. There was a pause on the line. You're hallucinating? May asked, her tone shifting from mechanic to concerned friend. Oxygen deprivation? Stress? Quirk singularity, Izuku muttered. It doesn't matter. I need a focus. I need a target. If I just wander around, I'm going to start making mistakes. Target, May repeated. She sounded like she was typing on a holographic keyboard. Okay. I have something. But it's suicide. Everything is suicide, Izuku said. Tell me. I managed to decrypt a file from the main server while the guards were distracted by your little kitchen raid, May said. Shigaraki isn't just sitting in the principal's office. He's connected to the main UA mainframe. Why? He's searching for something. But more importantly, he's using the main comm tower on top of the H building to coordinate the PLF forces across the entire city. It's a signal booster. It's how they're keeping the police scattered. If I take out the tower, you blind them, May said. They lose coordination. The patrols inside UA will be cut off from the city garrisons. And I can upload a loop into the internal sensors. A loop? I can blind the cameras in the prison block, May said. For maybe 10 minutes. Before the backup kicks in. 10 minutes. If the cameras were down, the students could talk. They could plan. Bakugo could organize them. But Midoriya, May warned. The tower is on the roof. It's exposed. And it's guarded by a high-value asset. Who? I don't have a name. Just a designation, the consumer. Izuku felt a chill run down his spine. Consumer. I'll take it down, Izuku said. Have the loop ready. Midnight tonight. Midoriya, May's voice softened. Be careful. You sound different. I am different, Izuku said. He touched the scar on his face. Yui changed us all. Over and out. The line went dead. The ascent, the climb to the roof was a torture session. Izuku had to scale the elevator shaft of the central building. 50 floors. Grip. Pull. Grip. Pull. His muscles burned. The one for all full cowling flickered around him at 5%, just enough to keep him moving, but conserving energy. He is waiting for you, the fourth user sensed. The danger is spiking. It feels like teeth. Teeth? Izuku muttered. He reached the maintenance hatch for the roof. The wind was howling outside. A storm was brewing, heavy purple clouds obscuring the moon. He pushed the hatch open. The roof of UA was a desolate landscape of metal vents and HVAC units. In the center stood the massive communication dish, glowing with red warning lights, and standing in front of it was a figure. He was wrapped in a straitjacket that had been modified, the sleeves cut open. His face was covered by a black mask that held his mouth open with metal spreaders. Moonfish. The death row inmate. He was twitching. His head cocked to the side at an unnatural angle. Flesh. Moonfish mumbled. The sound was wet, distorted by his mask. Fresh meat. Izuku climbed out of the hatch. The wind whipped his tattered cape. Step away from the tower, Izuku said. Moonfish turned. His eyes were wide, bloodshot, and devoid of humanity. I know you. Moonfish giggled. The little hero, the one with the soft skin, schooling. A blade erupted from Moonfish's mouth. It wasn't just a tooth. It was a sword of enamel, extending 10 meters in a blink. Izuku dodged. Danger Sense screamed. The tooth sliced through the metal HVAC unit next to him like it was butter. He's fast. Izuku yelled, rolling across the gravel roof. More. More teeth. Moonfish shrieked. Dozens of blades shot from his mouth. They branched out, creating a web of razor-sharp ivory. He wasn't aiming. He was filling the air with death. Izuku danced through the storm of blades. F.A. Jean charged his legs. He bounced off a vent, twisted in midair, and landed on a higher platform. Black Whip! Izuku fired his tendrils, trying to bind the villain. But Moonfish's teeth were sharp enough to cut the energy tendrils if Izuku didn't reinforce them. Slice. 2 whips were severed. He's cutting my quirks. Izuku gasped. He is insane, the second user analyzed coldly. He has no pattern. You cannot predict him. You must overwhelm him. Use the environment, the sixth suggested. Smoke. Izuku reached for his belt. Smoke screen. A cloud of purple smoke engulfed the roof. Izuku vanished into it. Moonfish paused. His teeth retracted slightly, clicking together. Hiding makes the meat tastier. Izuku hovered in the smoke, silent. He could hear Moonfish's ragged breathing. Now, the first whispered, Izuku Dove. Detroit Smash, 45%. He aimed for the center of the mass. But Moonfish reacted with instinctual madness. He spun, creating a sphere of blades around himself. Izuku saw the wall of teeth too late to stop. Adapt. He twisted his body, taking the slash across his armored shoulder instead of his chest. The impact threw him back. He crashed into the base of the calm tower. Pain exploded in his side. A tooth had grazed his ribs. Moonfish laughed, walking through the smoke. He looked like a spider made of knives. Found you. He raised a massive tooth, poised to skewer Izuku. Kill him or die, the second user roared. There is no third option. Use the gearshift. Overdrive. I can't control gearshift yet. Izuku screamed internally. Then use everything else. Izuku looked at the tower. Then at Moonfish. He didn't fire at Moonfish. He fired Black Whip at the base of the tower's support struts. Let's see how you chew this. Izuku pulled with everything he had. The metal groaned. The bolts sheared. The massive communication dish, tons of steel and electronics, tilted. Moonfish looked up. Pretty. The tower collapsed directly onto the villain. Crash. The roof shook. Sparks showered down as the dish smashed into the concrete, burying Moonfish underneath a mountain of debris. Silence returned, except for the howling wind. Izuku stood there, clutching his bleeding side. He waited. Is he dead? The fourth asked quietly. Izuku limped over to the wreckage. He saw a hand sticking out. It twitched. Flesh. A weak, gurgling voice whispered from under the steel. He was alive. Broken, trapped, but alive. Izuku fell to his knees. He vomited bile onto the gravel. The adrenaline crash hit him like a truck. I didn't kill him, Izuku panted. I didn't. It was luck, the second scowled. Next time, luck won't be enough. Izuku crawled to the exposed control panel of the destroyed tower. He pulled out the data drive May had given him. He jammed it into the port. Upload, he commanded. A green light flashed. Loop initiated. May, Izuku tapped his comm. It's done. The tower is down. Cameras are looped. Copy that, May's voice came back, sounding relieved. Get out of there, Midoriya. Dobby's squad is already in the elevator. Going, Izuku said. He stood up. But the world tilted. Darkness swarmed the edges of his vision. He stumbled. Not now, he pleaded. Not here. But the exhaustion was too deep. The blood loss, the hunger, the mental strain. He looked across the roof. And suddenly, he wasn't on the roof of UA anymore. The hallucination. He was in his mother's kitchen. The smell of katsudon filled the air. It was warm. Safe. Izuku? He turned. Inko Midoriya stood by the stove. She looked happy. Yum. Mom? Izuku whispered. He reached out. His hand was covered in blood. Inko's smile faltered. She looked at his hand. Then she looked at his face. Why are you hurting people, Izuku? She asked. Her voice wasn't hers. It was Shigaraki's. I have to, Izuku stammered. To save you. Save me? Inko laughed. She began to decay. Her skin flaked away like ash. You can't even save yourself. The kitchen dissolved. Now he was in the classroom. Class 1A. Everyone was there. Bakugo, Uraraka, Ida. But they were gray. Motionless. Like statues made of dust. You left us, Statue, Bakugo said. His jaw crumbled as he spoke. You're the hero, right? Why are we in cages? I'm trying. Izuku screamed. I'm trying so hard. Try harder, the second user's voice boomed from the front of the classroom. Kudo stood at the podium, wearing a general's uniform. Mercy is weakness. Weakness is death. Embrace the weapon, ninth. I am not a weapon! Izuku yelled. Then what are you? Kudo pointed a finger. You are a ghost. You are a killer who hasn't accepted his nature. Look at you. Izuku looked down. He wasn't wearing his hero costume. He was wearing all-for-one suit. No! Izuku swung his arms, trying to rip the suit off. Slap! A sensation of cold water hit his face. Izuku gasped, eyes snapping open. He was back on the roof. The rain had started. Freezing, icy rain. He was lying in a puddle. Get up, the third user said. His voice was calm, grounding. That was a stress response. You are hallucinating. But you are awake now. Izuku shivered violently. He pushed himself up. He looked over the edge of the roof. Down below, in the courtyard, chaos was erupting. The villains were running around in confusion. Their calms were down, and inside the gym, the cameras were looped. Izuku zoomed his vision. He saw the windows of the gym. He couldn't see inside, but he saw light flickering. Flash. 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 It was a flashlight. Someone inside had realized the sensors were down. W-E. A-R-E. H-E-R-E. W-E. A-R-E. R-E-D-Y. Bakugo. It had to be. Izuku stared at the light. It was a lifeline. A tether pulling him back from the abyss of his own mind. They're waiting, Izuku whispered. The voices of the second and the doubts of the hallucination faded into the background noise of the rain. I'm not a weapon, Izuku said, standing up on his broken leg. I'm the hope. He turned to the hatch. Danger sense, he activated. Dabi was coming up the stairs. Izuku smiled. It was a grim, mirthless smile. Let's play tag. He didn't go down the stairs. He jumped off the side of the building. Float. He plummeted 50 stories, catching an updraft at the last second to glide silently into the shadows of the lower campus. The ultimatum. 2 hours later, Izuku was back in the nest. He was shivering under a thermal blanket, treating the cut on his side with disinfectant alcohol. It burned, but the pain helped clear his head. Suddenly, the PA system of the school clicked on. It shouldn't have worked. The tower was down. Testing, testing. It was Shigaraki's voice. It was coming through the hardline speakers in the hallways, bypassing the wireless network. Izuku Midoriya, Shigaraki purred. I know you can hear me. You knocked down my tower. Very annoying. My connection to the city is fuzzy. Izuku stared at the ceiling speaker. But it doesn't matter, Shigaraki continued. Because I don't need the city. I have what I need right here. There was a pause. The sound of someone shuffling papers. You have been a very naughty ghost. Stealing food. Breaking bones. Scaring my men. It's time to end the game. Shigaraki's voice dropped an octave. I am giving you 24 hours. Come to the central courtyard. Surrender yourself. Give me one for all. Izuku clenched his fist. Never. If you don't, Shigaraki said, as if hearing him. I will bring out one student every hour. And I will decay them. Starting with, let's see, the loud one. Bakugo Katsuki. Izuku's blood froze. 24 hours, hero, Shigaraki laughed. Tick-tock. The speakers clicked off. In the silence of the tunnel, the voices returned. He is bluffing, the fourth said nervously. He is not, the first replied. He will do it. Then we have no choice, the second user said. And this time, he didn't sound angry. He sounded resigned. We go to war. And we kill him. Izuku looked at his mask lying on the floor. The green bunny ears were stained with mud and blood. He picked it up. Mei, he keyed the mic. I heard him. Mei's voice was shaky. Is the loop still active? No. They reset the system. Okay, Izuku said. He stood up. Mei. I need you to unlock the weapons locker in the support lab. Everything you have. Midoriya, what are you going to do? Izuku put the mask on. The eyes glowed green in the dark. I'm going to finish this.